Hi everyone, hello. Going live this afternoon for just a few moments. You know, it's the middle of the day and people are busy doing things, but have a message, a few thoughts I want to share with everyone. And so if you look at this now with me or later, my hope is that this message would really impact you and serve you in some capacity today. So what I want to talk with you about is mountains and molehills. Mountains and molehills. You might know about the great American superstar, Eric Weihenmayer. And if you don't know who he is, I encourage you to look him up because he's a pretty incredible person. He's someone who has done some incredible things in life. In fact, he's the first blind person to climb to the summit of Mount Everest. And as you know, that's the world's highest mountain. So imagine being able to climb to the world's highest mountain and get to the very top, and then imagine doing that as a blind person. And so when Eric was asked, how did you accomplish this incredible task, this incredible feat? He said, I first saw it in my mind. I visualized myself climbing that mountain, and I had a vision for me being at the very top, the summit, and looking out from the top and seeing the world. He saw it first in his mind. And so like Eric, we too have mountains, and it might not be a literal mountain, it might not be a physical mountain, but it's a mountain nonetheless. The difference is that we have sight, but we don't always have vision. And we know it says in Proverbs that without vision, the people perish. And sometimes the things that perish might not be you exactly as a person, but it's the dreams and the beliefs and the hope and the ability that we have within us to rise above circumstances, the ability to gain more faith and strengthen our families and strengthen our relationships and go after the things that we were created to manifest in our lives. Sometimes those are the things that completely perish when we encounter difficult things because we don't have the vision that we need. And so I want you to think about this for a moment. What do you do when you encounter mountains in your life? See, what happens way too often is that we rely so heavily on what other people think about us that we allow those thoughts that people have for us to shape who we are, to shape our beliefs about ourselves, in fact, to define who we are as a person. And really, the most important thing is you thinking about who you are. That's what should matter most. How do you think about yourself? How do you examine what happens on a daily basis in your life and how you're going to approach those things? Because inevitably we will encounter a variety of situations, and how we think about our capabilities will determine how we respond to them. But sadly, how we think about ourselves is so poor, is so undermining and absolutely not confirming of the things that God has made us to be, not uplifting in any way. It reduces our strength, it reduces and makes us doubt the gifts and talents that God has given to us, that He's placed within us to serve others and to create the best life possible for ourselves. And so I want you to think about the messages that come into your mind. Where do you pull these messages from? It's from your history, your family, from your experiences, all those lived experiences, the things that we hear in our heads. The environments that we draw those from might not always be healthy, might not be where we want to reside. And if that's the case, we need to make some changes because it will determine how we respond to the situations we encounter. Always remember that the most important conversation you can have with yourself is the conversation on a daily basis that says, I am worthy. I am capable. I am a child of God. I am blessed. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And if we are having different conversations, we need to check ourselves and do something about that. Because the most important conversation you can have in this world is the one you have with yourself. The other thing that impacts us and affects us as we look at situations we encounter is our perspectives. Two people can encounter the same situation and have two completely different perspectives and experiences about them. One will see a situation as a mountain and the other will see it as a molehill. Our perspectives shape how we see things. They shape how we experience life, how we do life, how we go through whatever the challenge is before us. And I can tell you that if you are not walking in a faith perspective, chances are really good that you're going to have a lot of mountains in your life. Those things that we believe and hold to be true, those things that we hear, the messages I was just talking about, they shape our perspectives as well. All our biases, all our belief systems, everything that we hold as our values, they determine whether or not we're going to have mountains or molehills in our lives. When situations happen, they can be overwhelming to us sometimes. They can be paralyzing, but they don't have to be. Somebody can go through something that's expected to be completely devastating on the one hand and deal with that with such grace and poise and firm belief that God's got me no matter what, and come through that situation with flying colors. You can go through the fire and not be burnt if you're walking in a faith perspective. But if you're not, every little thing will be completely paralyzing and taking you out. Now, here are some things that contribute to making mountains in our lives. There are two key things I want to touch on, and the first one is fear. Fear happens in our minds first. For us to be afraid of something, we think about all the bad things that can happen. Everything that can go wrong, we fixate on that, and we never think about what could possibly go right, what can go well. But we focus on everything that can go bad, and that manifests itself in something that is so much greater than us that the outcomes are going to be negative, and we could never turn it around. And so the fear takes over our lives. We're projecting something that might happen. Not that it will, but that it could, maybe, possibly might happen. And we live in that place of complete and utter fear. Fear happens in the mind first. We have to make a decision that we're going to continue to feed that fear. And it needs a lot of feeding, it needs a lot of nurturing. And we are really good at making sure that fear stays alive in us sometimes. Now remember and understand that fear is fueled by our past experiences. So maybe we had a bad relationship and we're now afraid to love again. That's a mountain. That's a mountain in our lives. Maybe we got into a near-fatal accident, something that was really devastating. And now we're afraid to get back on the road. We're afraid to get in the car. We're afraid to get on the motorbike, or maybe afraid to get in the truck, whatever it is. We hear that sound of the crash, or we have memories, or even if it's just the thought of, oh my gosh, maybe this can happen again. And we're totally afraid. There's some people who are paralyzed with fear about flying because of something that happened 10, 15 years ago, or just that thought they hold on to without realizing that you're actually at a greater risk of an accident on the road than in the skies. But that's a topic for another day. The point is that we can fuel the fear that just grabs a hold of our life and just does terrible things in making us move forward. And so this fear, when it just sucks the life out of us, it diminishes the very essence of who we are. We're not able to serve as God has intended for us to do so. And that fear produces mountains in our lives. I'll tell you, being afraid of dying doesn't keep you from dying. But what it does is it keeps you from living. I really want people to start living fully fulfilled lives. Live as you were intended to. If you're living just marginally right now, there are things you need to check in your life and change so that you can live the best life now. Tomorrow is not promised. You've really got to step into all that you're created to be now, today. Find a way to do that thing. So think about what you're afraid of and what's holding you back. And what is it holding you back from? Never ever let your dreams die because of fear. You know what? Sometimes we're afraid of a human sound. And that sound means nothing until we give it meaning. And then it means something. Fear requires the idea that something bad will happen, and we determine what that something is. We give it meaning. So every rejection we've had in the past, every regret, every failure, everything that's gone wrong, that could possibly go wrong, means nothing right now until we give it meaning, until we give it life, and then we walk in that fear. And sometimes we shape it and we give it renewed meaning. But whatever it is, we have to fuel that fear. And so I want you to really examine the fear, the things you fear most. And what you fear most, you need to get past it. And you need to move into action in a different direction. Otherwise, it's going to continue to hold you back. We give situations, words, meaning, and that meaning results in power. So we lose the power in our lives so many times. And I hope you guys are still with me. It's saying that my connection is weak. Hopefully you're still hearing me. So stop that. Let that fear become unhooked from your life, especially the negative outcomes. And the reason you really want to check that is because fear will turn molehills into mountains. And what is a molehill? A molehill is a small mound of dirt. It's created by moles, and moles are these little creatures that they dig and burrow into the earth, and they create these little mounds of dirt. And sometimes we have those in our lives. Thank you, Javon. I appreciate that. We have these little situations in our lives, but because of the things I mentioned before, our perspectives, what we allow others to think of us, and we take meaning from that, our fear, all of those things, then these little molehills become mountains. And many of us have mastered taking molehills in our lives and turning them into mountains. So remember, that is exactly the results you'll get if you allow fear to be manifested in your life on an ongoing basis. The other thing I want to mention that will turn a molehill into a mountain is worry. Now, we all worry about things, but to really have a pattern of worry in our lives is so unhealthy. And if you're a worrier, if that's something you do, I encourage you to work on that. Because worry never paid a bill. Worry never healed anybody from their illness. All worry does is it makes a problem into a bigger problem. Worry never solved infidelity. Worry never empowered anybody. In fact, when you're not well and you worry, it makes it worse. It creates more stress in your body. That stress produces stress hormones and more problems as a result, because you're weakening your immune system and you just stay in a place of not being able to really move forward and live that best life we've been talking about. Worry will make everything you encounter into a mountain instead of it staying as a molehill. Now, there's another scenario I want to touch on for a minute, and that is sometimes we create our own mountains by the decisions we make, by the actions we take, and sometimes by the lack of action we take. Some things we need to move into action about, and we just don't. And the behaviors we engage in, we create our own mountains. it would really serve us best to not hang around certain people because they pull us into things that are destructive. They pull us into things that create mountains in our lives. We really need to check ourselves about what we're doing and the resultant impact it has on us, those around us, and our loved ones. And there are some places you should avoid. We should avoid. Excuse me. If you're an alcoholic, you probably don't want to go into the liquor store to use the bathroom. I'm just saying. That's not what you want to do. If you are on a diet and your weakness is donuts, chances are probably good that you want to stay away from going into a donut shop to get coffee. Think about your life, your weaknesses, your temptations, the things that trigger certain behaviors for you, and stay away from those things. For some of us, there are some states and some cities we should not go to at all, because that becomes our playground. And the things we thought we were delivered from, the things we thought were behind us, just come right back in our face and create mountains for us. In fact, create bigger, more disastrous mountains in our lives. And when we respond to those triggers, then we start going downhill. In fact, downhill that mountain, right? Excuse me. But here's the good news. Here's the good news. You want to know how to now turn a mountain into a molehill? You have to have faith. You have to develop unshakable faith. Faith is that thing that will get you through all the mountains in your lives. Faith in God. Faith says, look, I don't know how I'm going to climb this mountain, but I know I'm going to get to the other side. Faith says, if God wants to move this mountain out of my life, he will. Mountain be gone, and it will be gone. But if God wants me to go through this mountain experience, he'll give me what it takes to climb the mountain. He'll give me the resources. He'll give me the strength, the support. He'll be there with me on this journey. Because honestly, sometimes some of us need that mountain experience. We need to climb the rough side of the mountain for our own good. It's the thing that can be most painful in our lives, but it's the thing that can push us to where God wants us to be. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Have you ever had that rough side of the mountain experience? And then you get to the top. Then you reach the summit of the mountain like Eric did. And there is nothing like a mountaintop experience, right? You shout and you scream and you sing and you cry and you just tell others about how you made it over. It's about making it over. It's about getting to the top. It's about resiliency. It's about knowing that God had you in the roughest side of the mountain during your climb. One other thing I want to leave with you is that there is a blessing on the other side of a problem, on the other side of a mountain. I know you know that. I know some of you have gotten the biggest blessings in your life after you've gone through these problems. Anytime a problem shows up, know that a blessing is right around the corner. It's right around the corner. You just got to keep holding on and pressing forward in order to receive it. God is preparing you to receive that blessing as much as he's preparing that blessing for you. It's about preparation, so you can receive it fully. When other people look at you like you're crazy because you don't have what it takes to make it through that problem, at least that's what they think. When you have no food coming and you don't know where your next meal is going to be, but you keep smiling and you're happy and you're helping others, even in your despair, even in your challenges, you're still able to help and serve others. You're singing and you're smiling and they look at you like, what's going on? You must be crazy. Don't worry about that. It's not time for them to know yet, but they will know in time that because of your faith, because of your unshakable faith, because of your knowledge that after a problem, after a mountain comes a blessing, you can rejoice through it all. You can say to them, you know what? I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. I know it's coming. I can't tell you how, but I'm holding on to faith. And don't get me wrong, faith requires action. You got to step out in your belief, knowing that when you do the things to improve yourselves, to empower you, to serve others and help others, and you believe wholeheartedly in what God can do and has done in your life and will continue to do, you will see how your mountains will turn into molehills. And so here are some examples of how a blessing comes after a problem. Think about Joseph in the Bible. Joseph's problem was his brothers, Potiphar's wife, jail. His blessing, he became prime minister of Egypt. He was the second in command to Pharaoh. He had power. He was serving even his brothers who tried to kill him. He was serving everybody and being a blessing to others. Don't tell me a blessing doesn't come after a problem. Then there was David. David's problem, Saul. Saul hated David. He was jealous of him. For 10 years, he tried to kill him. David's blessing, he got the crown. He became king. And on a personal note, I think of my mother. Her problem was cancer. Her blessing was that she was able to overcome. She was able to confuse the doctors who gave her 2 weeks to live, yet she lived 5 years. She was able to bring others into a knowledge and a love of our Creator by testifying about her mountain experience that God didn't take from her, but he wanted her to go through that mountain experience and get to the top. And she was able to use that as a testimony and bring others to believe in miracles, bring others to believe in what God can do in your life. And before it was all over for her, she touched so many people, so many souls, so many lives that to this day, people tell me what an amazing woman and blessing my mother was. Unfortunately, she's passed on, but the time she had here, she used it to make her mountain experience something that she can testify about. Now, what I want you to do is to put your name there. Put your name there where I just had names. Put your problem and your blessing. And if it's a problem, if it's a mountain that you're experiencing right now, think about the blessing that is to come. And I'll tell you something, whatever you think of as a blessing is not even going to be the blessing you think it's going to be. You're going to be far off from thinking it's the blessing that's coming. And here's why. Because far greater than anything we can desire for ourselves, God will do exceedingly, abundantly, more than we can think or imagine. Isn't that awesome? We serve a great God who got us in this life, who has our back, who has us through no matter what the circumstances are that we experience, no matter what the mountains are, no matter if you're bruised, getting bruised and broken as you climb the rough side of the mountain. He's there with you, for you, fortifying your mind and your body, giving you the strength it takes to make it to the top, to make it to the very top, to the summit of that mountain. Far greater, exceedingly abundantly, beyond anything we can think of or imagine, is what he will do for us. I want you to hold on to that as the going gets rough, as the mountains become bigger in magnitude each and every day in our lives. So today, starting now, I want you to exercise faith. Start turning those mountains into molehills. Start asking God to remove those mountains out of your life, but accept the fact that if he wants you to have that mountain experience, that you're going to face it with faith, that you're going to face it without fear, that you're going to face it without those perspectives that make everything look dark and dismal and grim, that you're going to face it without other people thinking about you in a certain way and you taking that to define who you are and what your capabilities are and who God made you to be. Turn to him and ask him what his will is for your life. Help him to reveal, ask him to reveal to you what you were put on this earth for. Because you're here for a specific reason. I talked a couple of days ago about answering the call. I urge you, I implore you to answer that call in your life, because not until you do that are you fully living. Climb that mountain, exercise the faith, turn those mountains in your life into molehills. That's where they belong. You are blessed so greatly, and the things that you experience should reflect that blessing. Even if you have to struggle, know that God will equip you with what it takes to climb the rough side of the mountain. He will give you the strength, the knowledge, the know-how, the people, the resources, the tenacity to make it up the rough side of the mountain. Because ultimately, we climb by faith and not by sight. Ultimately, we walk by faith and not by sight. Because even with the sight that some of us have, it does nothing for us. Develop vision. Develop God's vision in your life, and that will get you to the mountaintop experience. Today, I want you to tap into God's power so you can unleash your power. You're sitting on a reservoir of power that's untapped, wasting time, wasting energy, wasting possibility and blessings. Tap into God's power and unleash your power. Stand in your purpose and be passionate about life, even if it means climbing the rough side of the mountain with passion. Do it because you know you're not doing it alone. Get to the top. Share your story of how you're an overcomer, how you're a conqueror, how you made it, and help somebody to have a mountaintop experience as well. Have an amazing day, and we'll talk soon.